Have you ever heard older adults wonder, why am I still doing this at my age? If someone is over 70, they've likely found themselves trapped by habits that once made sense but now offer no peace, value, or even basic comfort. Yet, many seniors continue to push themselves physically, socially, and emotionally, as if they still need to prove something to others. The truth is, there comes a point when letting go isn't just wise, it's vital. And that moment is now. After all the years lived, battles fought, and lessons learned, people of this age deserve far more than stress, guilt, or unnecessary expectations. There are 5 specific things that individuals over 70 simply no longer need to do. This isn't about giving up, rather, it signifies entering a life stage where inner peace is valued above external pressure, and authenticity trumps outward appearances. These habits and mindsets often persist long past their expiration date, subtly draining energy and joy. But once their detrimental nature is recognized, one can finally break free. Each of these 5 points represents a small yet powerful shift, capable of helping reclaim one's time, dignity, and most importantly, freedom. 1. Forcing yourself to please everyone. Many over 70 still carry the heavy burden of pleasing others, even at the cost of their own peace of mind. This is one of the most cumbersome and utterly unnecessary loads to bear in one's later years. It starts small, agreeing to a dinner you don't want to attend, staying silent about concerns to avoid trouble, or agreeing to watch grandchildren for the 3rd time in a week despite aching knees and a longing for a quiet day. You brush off these thoughts, believing it's the right thing to do. But over time, you begin to feel your life isn't entirely your own. This desire to please often stems from a lifelong habit of prioritizing others, especially among those raised in an era where self-sacrifice was lauded and self-care mistakenly seen as selfishness. However, at this stage of life, these rules need re-evaluation. You've earned the right to be honest, assert your needs, and stop bending over backward just to keep the peace. Those who genuinely care will understand. And those who don't? Well, that tells you all you need to know. There's an old saying, at some point your no becomes as sacred as your yes. When you start respecting your boundaries, you create space for deeper, more authentic relationships that don't demand excessive effort from you. Consider Carol, 74, who for decades tried to be the family's linchpin. She always hosted, always said yes, always handled every little detail. One day she confessed, "I woke up and realized I was depleted. Not just tired, but bone-weary. And not a single person asked how I was feeling." That day, she changed. She started saying no when she meant no. And something amazing happened. Instead of falling apart, her relationships became clearer. Some strengthened, some faded away. But in every instance, she felt more alive. At this age, you don't need to feel guilty for putting yourself first. In fact, it often makes you more present, available, and genuinely loving in the moments you do choose to give. You've spent a lifetime giving. Now it's time to extend some grace to yourself. So, ask yourself, when was the last time you did something simply because you wanted to, not because someone expected it? If it's been a while, perhaps it's time to start again. Not with guilt or apologies, but with a quiet confidence that says, I've lived long enough to know what matters, and I matter too. 2. Trying to look young for others. There comes a time when the pursuit of youth becomes more exhausting than fulfilling. For many, this period begins after age 70. Yet, we live in a world that persistently insists we fight aging with all our might. Creams, dyes, surgeries, filters. The pressure to look younger than your age doesn't magically disappear at 70. In fact, for some, it only intensifies. But here's the quiet truth wise older adults understand. Looking young isn't the same as being healthy. And it certainly doesn't guarantee happiness. Too often, the chase for a youthful appearance becomes a fear-driven cycle. You notice a new wrinkle and rush to erase it. Your hair grays, and you panic, worrying about how others might perceive you. But instead of feeling better, you often feel more anxious, because the real issue isn't the wrinkle or the hair. It's the internal belief that aging somehow makes you less valuable. This belief is not only false, it's harmful. Psychologically, this obsession with youth is rooted in a culture that glorifies appearance and undervalues experience. But as we age, we gain what youth cannot provide: perspective. And when you constantly try to look young just to meet societal expectations, you strip yourself of the dignity that naturally comes with age. Let's be practical. There's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself, dressing well, staying neat and fit, looking your best. But that's very different from trying to erase the very years that have shaped you. One man, 79, met at a senior center said, "When I finally stopped dyeing my hair and hiding every wrinkle, people started seeing me. Not the version I was pretending to be, but the real me. And you know what? It was the most liberating moment of my life." The truth is, people who genuinely love you aren't attached to your smooth skin or thick hair. They're drawn to your spirit, your sense of humor, how you listen without judgment, how you carry your pain and joy with quiet strength. That's what leaves a lasting impression. So instead of spending precious time and energy fighting age, try embracing it.
Let your face tell a story.
Let your body reflect a life well lived. There's a kind of confidence that only comes from accepting every year you've lived. And that confidence can light up a room better than any anti-aging product. 3. Pretending everything is always okay. One of the toughest habits many older adults carry into their 70s and beyond is the belief that they must always be strong, cheerful, and perfectly fine, no matter what they're going through. It's almost as if we've internalized a rule: don't complain, don't burden anyone, just smile and say you're okay. But here's the thing, pretending you're okay when you're not doesn't make you strong, it makes you invisible. And even worse, it can slowly erode your mental and emotional well-being. After 70, the reality is that life becomes more layered. There's grief, physical discomfort. Sometimes, there's guilt about being a burden. Instead of expressing these feelings, many older adults suppress them deep inside, thinking silence equates to strength. But in reality, silence can turn into isolation. You start to feel no one understands you because you've told people for years that everything is fine. Stoic philosophy reminds us that being honest about our inner world isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Ancient Stoics believed in acknowledging pain without dramatizing it and speaking truth without shame. This means it's not only okay to say, "I'm having a tough day," or "I could use some company," it's necessary. You weren't put on this earth to suffer in silence. And you are no less worthy just because you admit you're hurting. Consider this: when you tell someone you're fine while carrying a burden of sadness or fear, you're not just hiding your struggles. You're also closing the door to connection. The people around you, family, friends, even neighbors, cannot support you if they don't know you need it. And contrary to popular belief, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of emotional maturity. Take Helen, 82, who for decades never admitted when she was struggling. After her husband died, she told everyone she was coping wonderfully. But behind closed doors, she was drowning. When she finally started opening up, sharing her grief in a support group, and talking honestly with her daughter, something shifted. Her relationships deepened. Laughter returned, and she no longer felt like she was living two separate lives. The truth is, people who genuinely care would rather know what's truly going on than hear another polite lie. They can't be there for a version of you that doesn't exist. They want to be there for the real you, with all your scars, your fears, and your strength. So if you're still trying to hold it together, still saying "I'm okay" when your heart says otherwise, perhaps it's time to stop. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally wise enough to know that honesty leads to healing. And you deserve to be seen not just as a cheerful face, but as a whole, complex, beautifully human being. 4. Apologizing for living differently. At 70 and beyond, many older adults find themselves quietly apologizing for how they choose to live. Whether it's declining noisy gatherings, needing more rest, having an early dinner, not wanting to learn new tech, or simply desiring peace over stimulation, they don't say sorry directly, but the tone is there: "I hope this is okay," "Sorry, I'm not as fun anymore," or "I know I'm a burden." These small phrases reflect something deeper, a lingering pressure to conform to others' expectations, even in our later years. But here's the truth: once you're 70, you've earned the right to live by your own rules, not someone else's clock or social calendar. The need to apologize for prioritizing comfort, boundaries, or personal rhythms must stop. It doesn't make you more polite. It makes you smaller. And you weren't made to shrink in your later years. You were made to grow into your true self. Stoicism teaches that we should align our lives with nature and reason, not the noise of society. This means understanding what brings peace, what nourishes the soul, and what drains it. If you prefer reading a book over attending a family picnic, it doesn't make you antisocial. It means you're wise enough to choose what feeds your spirit, and that's nothing to apologize for. This quiet habit of over-apologizing is rooted in many older adults being raised to believe their worth depended on how compliant, helpful, or self-sacrificing they were. But with age, you start to see the cost of this mindset: exhaustion, resentment, and a disconnect from your own needs. You've spent years pleasing others. Now it's time to please your soul. There's a story of Gerald, 79, who stopped attending church events, though he felt pressure to keep showing up. He said he was tired and just wanted his Sundays quiet. But every time he missed, he felt he had to explain himself. One day his daughter told him, "Dad, you don't owe anyone an explanation. If it brings you peace, it's the right choice." That conversation changed him. He stopped apologizing and began to embrace his new rhythm with pride, not guilt. Old age brings clarity. You know what matters and what doesn't. You know which people energize you and which quietly drain you. You know what food suits you, what music soothes you, what pace of life truly feels good in your bones. So why apologize for honoring that wisdom? When you apologize for being too quiet, too slow, or too different, you send yourself a message that your preferences are a problem. But they're not. They are the result of a life fully lived, a life that has earned the right to pause, reflect, and make intentional choices. So, here's a gentle reminder: you don't need to justify your pace. You don't need to apologize for your peace. You don't need to explain why you no longer do what others expect. Your life isn't a performance. It's your sanctuary, and there's nothing wrong with protecting it. 5. Chasing universal approval. One of the hardest habits to let go of with age is the need for approval. For many, even after 70, there's still this quiet desire to be liked, accepted, or validated by others: family, neighbors, society. We find ourselves re-evaluating decisions, softening our opinions, or pretending to agree with what we don't. All because we fear being judged, excluded, or perceived as too much or too different. This is a trap we've fallen into since childhood, and it often follows us into our golden years. But here's the thing: life after 70 is too short to live it by someone else's expectations. Stoic philosophy, known for its profound wisdom, urges us to focus solely on what's within our control: our own actions, thoughts, and inner values, not the shifting opinions of others. Trying to manage how others perceive us is like trying to hold water in your hands. It inevitably slips through, no matter how tightly you squeeze. Yet, many older adults continue to carry this burden of seeking approval, even when it has long ceased to bring them any benefit. They say yes when they truly mean no. They remain silent in situations where their life experience and wisdom could offer clarity. They dress or behave in certain ways not because it aligns with their inner state, but because it meets others' expectations for someone their age. However, the older one gets, the clearer a simple truth becomes: approval is an ever-elusive goal. It's impossible to please everyone. So why continue these futile attempts? Take Evelyn, a woman met at a community center, in her 80s. She genuinely loved bright clothes and bold earrings, and her infectious laugh could fill a room. Yet for years, she deliberately muted her individuality, opting for neutral beige outfits and staying quiet because her daughter insisted she act her age. One day, Evelyn looked in the mirror and asked herself a piercing question: whose life am I really living? Within that week, she started wearing her favorite vibrant colors again. She confessed she finally felt like herself. You don't need anyone's permission to be yourself, especially at this stage of life. The people who truly love and value you would never ask you to shrink, pretend, or apologize for your true essence. And those who do, their approval isn't worth the price of your lost peace. Stoicism reminds us to act in accordance with virtue, not in pursuit of applause. This means doing what's right, not striving for popularity. Speaking your truth, not what's convenient. Living authentically, not for show. Approval is fleeting and transient. Integrity, however, is lasting and unshakable. So the next time you feel an overwhelming urge to please everyone, pause and ask yourself, does this align with my true convictions? If the answer is no, then it's not worth your precious time. You've earned your wisdom. You've navigated decades of life, loved, lost, survived, and grown. You no longer need to chase acceptance like a child desperately trying to fit in. You belong to yourself, your values, your own ever-evolving life. Let younger generations chase popularity. Let others worry about conforming. This race is over for you. And what replaces it is far better: it's freedom. Because the day you stop needing approval is the day you start living in full color again. Boldly, unapologetically, and truly. That's the real beauty of aging. You finally get to be exactly who you are, without explanation.
Final thoughts.
Isn't it amazing how the years lived gradually reveal the true value of things? In our youth, we were taught to strive for more, do more, be more, achieve more. Yet, with time, our vision becomes clearer. We begin to realize that inner peace is far more valuable than productivity, that deep connection with loved ones is more significant than social status, and that being true to oneself is the greatest freedom of all. The truth is, much of what once seemed vital no longer deserves a place in one's life. The things discussed earlier, excessive physical strain, the relentless pursuit of others' approval, living by someone else's pace or rules, these are all burdens we were conditioned to carry. But after 70, these burdens transform into unnecessary, oppressive weights. And letting them go doesn't mean giving up or showing weakness. It means finally stepping into your own deeply earned wisdom. You've earned the right to slow down without apology. You've earned the right to say no without explanation. You've earned the right to full rest, to choose what truly energizes you, to make peace with where you are now and what you've been through. There's a special quiet courage in simplifying life, in decisively cutting away everything that no longer serves your spiritual well-being. And perhaps this is the true essence of aging, not desperately clinging to fading youth, not pretending you're still who you once were, but finding deep inner comfort with who you are right now. It's a life with less external noise, less pressure, more authenticity, and greater freedom. If you've ever felt guilty for slowing down or hesitated to make changes that felt right, hopefully, this text has given you unspoken permission to breathe a little easier. Because stopping certain things after 70 isn't just okay. It's vital. It's how you make space for what truly matters. A life filled with purpose doesn't have to be overly busy. A meaningful life doesn't have to be overflowing with obligations. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly reside in your truths and know that you are good enough, not for what you produce, prove, or earn, but simply because you exist. So be kind to yourself, be honest, and above all be free. Because this stage of life isn't the end of your story. It's the most honest and authentic chapter of all.